What are our children learning? Who's teaching them? Can it be done better, faster, cheaper, and with more Douglas Adams references? This is a place where those ideas and so many more get broken down, brainstormed, expanded on, and compiled. This is a place where no idea is a bad idea, except the bad ideas and no ideas, because more ideas you hear, the more likely you are to hear a good idea. BrainTrust meets every Wednesday night here on the Academy Debate Channel show, and joining me to discuss educational reform and its best, worst, and funnest is actually Tina, Cassie the Ragdoll, and Placeholder Films, and anybody else that makes it before we fill up to 6. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
We'll do individual shilling at the end of the night, I promise. But educational reform. Tina, you've had quite a bit of experience in education, and we were really excited about getting you on. So you want to start us off?
Well, I mean, as far as like childhood education, I don't have as much experience as like an actual teacher because I only went through normal high school, but I've been in academia and college now for almost 10 years as a student and also kind of as a semi-professor. And like, long story short, there definitely are a lot of things I've seen that can be very much like improved on. Especially at the college level, there's a lot of, I think pretty much every week I'm dealing with bureaucratic bullshit for the most part, and it's from the school itself. And then I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I know a lot about the bureaucratic stuff that goes on in that. And just, I don't really know where to start with this other than the fact that there's definitely a lot that can be improved as both a student and someone who's also taught. So.
Yeah. But how can we improve, like, as far as the bureaucracy goes? Can we just trim it down, shut it back, or cut it back? I mean, what's the solution there? To get rid of some rules, maybe consolidate?
Well, there's a lot of rules that are set, you know, and there are a lot of rules that are there, and I think they're necessary. Like, one thing you have in college is you have student privacy laws. I wouldn't implement that in high school because those are minors, and minors shouldn't really have privacy. But when in college, it's very important because it basically it forces kids to kind of, well, not kids, young adults at that point, to basically stand on their own because, you know, they don't have parents checking on their grades. They don't have stuff like that. So those are good bureaucratic policies. But then there's just a lot of, especially now, there's a lot of hand-holding. And it really bugs me. That shouldn't be there. So I mentioned that, you know, students need to stand on their own in college. But now it just seems like it is almost impossible to fail a student. When you want to fail a student, even in college, like, it's really hard in high school and, you know, lower grades. But in college, it's getting to the point where it's hard to fail somebody. You literally have to prove that they failed, and you have to try to fail. And it is the most frustrating thing I've ever, like, it really frustrates me because I've taught and I've not seen a student in like 7 class periods in a class where attendance is mandatory. And I've gotten called into meetings talking about their grade and how if there's anything we can do to improve. And I'm like, it's a lab course. They don't have time to make up these courses, and they miss 7 courses for not valid reasons. So,
and you're in microbiology too, aren't you?
Biochemistry.
Biochemistry. So I really want the lab tech that's checking my blood work to, like, know their shit. I'm really kind of adamant about that. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
Yeah,
but
it's just
the standards should be pretty high for that kind of thing.
I feel like it starts in high school because I grew up with parents who, as far as school was, you were guilty until proven innocent, which is, I think, something every parent needs to do because kids are little fuckers who lie all the time. So
yes,
we were held accountable as kids for our own actions. And I did have a teacher who bullied me. I had one. And my parents to this day still feel guilty because I was telling them things and they didn't believe me. But let me tell you, even though after that incident, that was in 4th grade, in 5th grade and in like 7th grade, I tried to say my teacher was bullying me, and my parents went straight to the teacher and they were like, oh no, she's just not turning in her work. And there were a few other things. So Like, and it's like a virus, really. The lack of accountability has kind of now spread to like bureaucracy, and it's not just in the lower schools, it's now in higher education, and it's really annoying because at some point people do have to stand on their own. So that's one thing I think we can improve, is just take away the hand-holding. Let people fail. If they don't do the work, they fail. It's that simple. But then there's other things, not just the accountability stuff. There's also like bureaucracy, especially in higher education. It just can get in the way of things, and it doesn't necessarily have to get in the way. I don't know how to describe it, because you have legitimate safety procedures that should be followed, and that's not getting in the way. Like, I have to deal with IRB for my research. That's fine. It's having to deal with other thing. IRB, for those who don't know, is basically the organization that makes sure you're doing everything ethical in your research. That's a good organization. I'm not saying that needs to be replaced. But there's other things. There's the school making it ridiculously difficult to do purchases, the school doing a few other things, the school getting in your way if your research topic is not favorable.
Such as?
It mostly happens in social sciences, but if you're doing a project that's not showing results that are, well, let's just say PC, sometimes the schools will get in the way.
So they're not in a search for the
I know that one too well.
Yeah.
You said something earlier about it's impossible to fail people. I was looking at some study on Japanese children and how Japanese schools are run, and they actually focus on the students who can't answer the question and use them as not as a punishing example, but they bring them up to, like, they'll say, okay, who can answer this question? Everybody raises their hand. One kid's in the back is like, I don't know. So they point out, all right, come up. And they bring them up to the board and they say, okay, here's your pen. You're going to mark on the board. Here, write down the problem. So he'll write down the problem and say, okay, well, now what's the next step? I don't know. Anybody want to encourage them? And then the class will encourage, carry the two, So
honestly, you should focus on the students who don't know, because if a student already knows, then they don't have to be retaught it. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: you really do learn from your mistakes. I made a massive mistake a couple weeks ago in my research, and I wasted probably about $1,000, which is a drop in the bucket for what I do, but it's a lot of money. It was a mistake on my part. I was essentially trying to make phase 2 metabolism happen on a compound that cannot do that unless you go through phase 1. So it didn't matter what I did, it wasn't going to work. And my advisor, who's also my professor, sat me down and she went over this mistake. And let me tell you, I'm going to remember that forever because of the consequences of, what I did, how much money I cost, how much time I set back, stuff like that. You learn from your mistakes. And I feel like it's a major problem in both higher education and secondary and, primary education. We don't focus on those people who are making mistakes. We don't let people make mistakes. We don't let people fail.
And that's the thing about this Japanese system, is that they were actually looking for the failure so they could correct it. And, they weren't, the kids being put up there weren't actually getting upset by it. They were getting encouraged, and they were learning better than the other students. The other students, there's two really effective ways of learning things, by the way. There's something called tacit learning, which is where you put your hands on it and you do it. And then people call it learning by doing. And then there's learning by teaching, and you will be shocked. And I'm sure that Tina will back me up on this, because I've had to teach students. I had to tutor all through college, or I would not have made it. But when you teach people stuff, you actually learn it better. You start looking into the overall the bigger picture of what you're trying to explain, because you need to make sense of it in your head so you can properly explain it, so you can find the proper context to put it in to teach this person. And that really helps you understand concepts a lot better.
I find for me, it's a mixture of both. And for a lot of students, it is. When I'm learning a new lab procedure or a new instrument or whatever, I need to physically mess with it. I can't just read a manual. It will not translate. I have to actually physically mess with it. I have to do the experiment. I have to do the experiment with someone making sure I don't, break this $450,000 instrument. But I have to do it first. But also, when you have a good professor, because I've had really bad professors and I have really good ones. I work under one who's really good. They give you criticism. They correct your mistakes, but they're actually teaching you. They're letting you learn. They're not holding your hand the entire time, and they're not, letting you find your way through the woods by yourself. There is a balance. And I feel like, especially in all education right now, especially in the United States, that's not happening. And so we're seeing students come into college not ready to be on their own, and they just kind of look like they're lost is the best way to explain it, or they're leaving college and they don't know how to survive in the workforce.
That's a major factor. Here's a few things that I think schools don't teach and should right off the bat, because I got to stop you and throw this out there. But one, we got rid of all our civil courses. We don't teach civil courses anymore, and we should. Civil studies.
Describe what a civil studies course is, because I might have had it, but it was renamed.
It's going to be a course which basically teaches you about your basic rights, laws, obligations as a citizen, your what authorities have, and like how to it's a little bit of civic pride, a little bit of civic duty, all mixed in one.
So my school did offer that. It was just a general government class, but here's the problem. You didn't get all of the good stuff unless you took either the AP government class or the dual credit college level government class. If you just took the regular, you got none of that. I took the dual credit course, so I actually got a bunch of that.
Yeah, I think they should teach a civics course, and it should be mandatory. It shouldn't be an elective. It should be mandatory.
Yeah.
And you should have to learn how to deal with the government. When you have to go to court, how to behave. When you are engaging with the police officer, these are good practices. These will get you arrested. Don't talk yourself into a ticket kind of behavior, and basic things about, how the government works, how it functions. So when you see a law that's enforced and it sucks and you're really angry, you don't blame, say, like a judge or a president or something like that. You blame the lawmakers. You go, okay, I know how laws are made, civics.
So we don't produce sovereign citizens.
Yes, that way we don't end up with sovereign citizens and lunatics.
Every time someone says sovereign citizens, I just think of the video of the one girl who was a sovereign citizen, and the cop is pulling her out of the car and she's screaming rape, and I'm like, that is not rape. Stop it.
The one that like, it was all fun and games until the girl put the kid in front of her chest.
I haven't seen the one where they drag their kids. Are you talking about the one woman? Well, that was a bunch of. Never mind. That wasn't a sovereign citizen case. That was just a bunch of crazy.
Yeah, she was yelling sovereign citizen and all that stuff. So I'm sorry. That was where I stopped laughing, and I went, oh shit, this is a really serious issue.
Anytime kids are involved or they start using people as human shields, it becomes not funny anymore. But if it's just them being dumb and hurting themselves, it's hilarious.
Basically, you just wait until you see them get tased, and then you go hi and you click the next video.
It amazes me. Those are the most every time I see a sovereign citizen video, it doesn't matter what the race of the person is. Those are the most patient fucking cops I have ever seen.
Yeah, they're always so polite. And you're just slapping your head. You're like, dude, you don't have to go through all this. He wasn't even pulling you over for a traffic violation. All you have to do is get a damn tag.
Sorry for that tangent, but just sovereign citizens are amazing. But
let's get back on track.
Yeah,
but
get back to
the
topic.
second thing I think that they should teach, but they don't, is I think that home economics should be a required course. And when I say home economics, I'm not talking about baking cakes and sewing. I'm talking about learning how to manage your finances, how to balance your checkbook with that in the digital age, how to manage social media accounts. That should definitely be part of home economics.
The social media accounts, yes, especially nowadays when people will like throw you under the bus for just saying shit posting, essentially.
Yeah.
But the budgeting, and my parents did a good job of sitting me down and teaching me how to do a budget. But I know people who are like older than me, they're in their 30s, and they have no idea how to fucking budget, and they're always living paycheck to paycheck. I live paycheck to paycheck now, but that's because I make well under poverty level money, but I still have a lot of extra spending money to go on vacation.
It's all going to level out. I promise you. It gets better. It gets better after you graduate.
But the thing about it is I'm still budgeting my money enough to have spending money to not be in financial trouble. And I know people who make way more than I do, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm like, how?
Yeah, and it was funny is I know people who make half of what I do in similar situations, and they're living in the same area I am, and I'm like, how?
I think it all comes down to budgeting. Unless that person has some legitimate crisis situation stuff going on that you may not know about, a lot of it comes down to budgeting. A lot of people have made stupid financial decisions, and they own way more than they need. And we do need a financing course to maybe reduce some of those financial decisions.
It should be mandatory. I believe it should be mandatory. But now let's get back to things that schools shouldn't be teaching, because we're talking about educational reform, and I think they've kind of overstepped their bounds. If
we're going to talk about things they shouldn't be teaching, it kind of goes in. Well, no, it doesn't. But and the thing they taught, and they taught it when I was in school, and it was the most annoying thing because it was just the same information. It's teaching to take this stupid test every single year. Teach to the test. And the thing about it is that you don't learn anything that way. I learned how to take a test, that type of test, but no other tests. It doesn't teach you anything.
So you're talking about like technical tests, like MCATs and stuff.
Well, yes, like MCATs.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought you meant. I wasn't. Yeah. I want to clarify for the audience, make sure we're all on the same page. So the courses on how to take specific tests are absolutely
And the thing about it is
going to high school and you see the elective how to take the SATs. Look, go be a band geek. Go.
Not just the SAT. Well, the SAT prep can be good for students who have never taken a test like the SAT. By the time I took the SAT, I had already taken some AP tests.
If you live in any state with standardized testing, by the time you're in 5th grade, you've taken 10 tests like the SAT.
Well, but the thing about, so you don't really need an entire course to take SAT. I will agree with that. But it is good, I think, because even if you've done standardized testing, which I am against standardized testing because it teaches for the test and does really nothing else for education. But we can talk about that in a minute. But if you're doing, I don't think you need a full course, but I think you need some test runs because while it is like standardized testing, you're on a time limit. And you need to at least go through that once or twice. Because there is no time limit for the standardized testing in my state.
Yeah.
Oh, in Georgia there is, and they start as early as kindergarten.
You know what? You need to move to the next state so we can have some more diversity here. Oh my God.
Exactly.
This is starting to get irritating, Cassie. Like,
I know.
We need a Floridian. Floridian. Did that come out?
No, you don't. Floridian. No Floridians, please. No.
Mr. Florida. Oh, and by the way, Victor Rand, I totally agreed. Standardized testing is, you know what? You were a lot more polite than what I would have said. A lot, like infinitely more polite than I would have been.
I have known teachers who have quit because of standardized testing, because it took all of the joy out of teaching for them.
Now, Cassie, you're in Georgia, so you know about the gateway test, right?
Yeah, and
Okay. So I was in
no.
I was in the test group for the gateway test, and they told they made the horrible, horrible, horrible mistake of telling a person like me that this was a test run on a test, and that this test could not, would not, should not affect anything with me, and my name would not even be on the test. So,
but all C.
It was nothing but written portions, and I had 2 words to write down in every single one of them, and that was it.
They started so when I went through 3 versions of standardized tests when I was in school. I did the tax, then I did the tex. Those are different things, even though they sound very similar. One of them had an A, the other one had an E, but the tests were actually different. And then they did the STAR. And the STAR, from my knowledge, is what they currently use in Texas. But the problem the problem is that, one, you're learning the entire year how to take these damn tests. You're not actually learning material for the classes that you should be learning. And by the time, and that really does fuck with some kids. I mean, I did extra stuff outside of school, so I was very prepared for college when I got into it, and I have a very good grasp of knowledge, but I seeked that out. I didn't learn a lot in the schools other than just to take these dumb tests, except in my elective courses. I learned a lot in my elective courses. But, and then at the same time, those tests, I had 3 different tests when I was going through school, and the strategy changed 3 different times because the test changed 3 different times. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, I just feel like if we got rid of the standardized testing, you would probably get kids learning better. Because I know that for me, the standardized testings were the worst, and it just became a routine, and I didn't learn anything.
Well, on top of that, you have kids who do not test well.
Well, that's the other thing. So I've been in school long enough to know exactly how I learn things. I am a terrible test taker. Contrary to the fact that I am almost a doctor, I am a terrible test taker.
You know what's funny about that, Tina? Until I reached college age, I was terrible at literally every single aspect of school, including showing up and just not arguing. And the one thing that got me from 1st grade to 12th is I could take a fucking test.
It switched from primary and secondary school. I was fine and I could take tests, and then as soon as I got into high school, I could do everything else but test. And in college, I still struggle with testing. Give me a project, I do fine. Give me a speech, I'll do fine. Give me a lab practical, which is what I take in college for the lab courses most of the time. They aren't tests. They're usually like handhold experiments to kind of show what you learn. Do amazing. Make me sit down and write down something. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
it's
fucked.
It's like... I'm so glad that my PhD program does not do. So in a lot of PhD programs, they make you take these tests, which are actually like sit-down tests, and they're all about a certain subject. I'm so glad my PhD program doesn't do it, and the defense is all oral, because otherwise I would be so fucked. I'd still get through it, but I'd be fucked.
Well, we're talking about testing, and I want to kind of bring this back to educational reform, but this is really an important part of educational reform. You have companies like Pearson, and oh my God, I want to find out who's the CEO of Pearson, and I want to write him a strongly worded letter. That's what I'm going to say on the air. Anyway.
But it kind of rots back into tests though, because not every kid learns through tests. I am a very practical learner, and I can relay the information to you.
It's not just the test taking now; it's the online courses. All right, if you're going to college online, please don't go to college online. I can't finish the first sentence, so I'm just going to start a whole new one. Please don't go to college online. Go to college.
I would recommend, if you do need to take an online class, or you just want to get something out of the way because it's online, take something that's really dumb, like your ethics course or something. Get those out of the way. Do not take anything that you need to see. Do not take a math online. Do not take...
No, stay away from math online. Math online will destroy your GPA. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I have pretty decent grades. I have all A's and B's, mostly A's in college. I have 3 C's, and one of them is for primary, like not primary, but like just general college algebra. I have a C in, and keep in mind, I took 2 calculus and a trig course after that, and I got all A's. So it's not because I'm bad at math, it's because I took it online.
Yeah, I'm an engineer that got like a C in geometry because of Pearson's on. And by the way, Victor's in the chat talking about it's, test taking basically just shows what you learned. But the problem is the companies that create these tests also go and they create what are called like educational packets. So like say you're taking calculus and you're taking it online, you'll have to go through Pearson's specific protocol. And here's the kicker. The protocol, like you'll have to do 40 calculus problems, right? So you're going through them, and I'm good at calculus. It's kind of just like a language to me, and I just speak it. So I'm going through, and I'm like, no, I select the right answer. On the course, because you have to do these, even when you go into the college, you have to take these online classes basically and do all these. They're not tests, they're like worksheets, and even the professor will be like, no, that's messed. Yeah, that particular problem is incorrect. The correct answer was C, even though the program told you it was B. And every day it's just people complaining about the stupid programs, the stupid worksheets.
And here's the thing, I'm not anti-test. I believe there should be tests, because I do agree with that. They do test your knowledge. I think what I don't like is I don't like a test that is fully just multiple choice. I think that, and there's a reason for this, and I'm bringing it up. It needs to be a test that not only it can have multiple choice on it, but it also has to have short answer. And I'm a strong advocate for that, because the teacher can read what you're trying to write and deduce, for the most part, if you actually understand or not, better in a short answer than they can just from a multiple choice.
Yeah. Multiple choice doesn't show if you can utilize the knowledge you
exactly.
Tina, you're actually going to really probably disagree with me on this, but I'm going to agree with you on opposing all multiple choice answers or questions, all true or false questions. And in my opinion, all tests should be short answer and essay format, and the like.
Oh no,
I believe that the short answer portion should account for probably 10 to 20% of the test. I believe that if you can't do 80% essays, then you shouldn't be graduating. I'm sorry. If you're not drinking half a pot of coffee an hour, then you're not in college.
I would make it a bit more balanced. And also, depending on the subject matter, you can use your multiple choice true or false for just basic knowledge. Like, because when you get into especially like graduate courses, there's just basic stuff that doesn't need an explanation. Like for example, which of these drugs is an opiate? That's actually a question on one of my talks questions, and that was a multiple choice question. But that is so simple in toxicology that deserves to be a multiple choice. And if you get that wrong, that's a problem. That's a problem. But that can be a multiple choice. But then you get into something, and I'm going to use tox again, where it's like, explain how phase 1 metabolism works on this structure. You should be able to work that out if you truly understand toxicology, forensic toxicology. You should understand how phase metabolism works, what groups it's going to attack, well, not attack, but what groups are going to be affected, how the structure is going to look after it goes through phase metabolism, phase 1 metabolism, stuff like that. That would be a good short answer on the same test with the question that says, which of these is an opiate? So,
see, I would take a more top-down approach and look at it from each individual level of our education system. So, for example, starting K through 12, because there are 3 levels to K through 12 here in the States. I think so in the UK and Canada, but their education system's weird. We teach to test, which we've already kind of talked about, but what we should be teaching is to ability and development. So what we wind up seeing here in the American education system is really smart students falling behind because they have no interest in what's going on and find it difficult or impossible to pay attention. So having like a GATE program, like gifted and talented, education for all levels of education, that way we can assess your ability and teach accordingly, would be a much better way to do that. So we can wind up having kids who are like genius level in middle school learning calc, for example. Like they teach calculus to middle school students in China. There's no reason we can't do that for our students who are able to do that here.
Yeah.
But that would also require removing all standardized testing. And because of like No Child Left Behind, that's not going to happen.
Nope. And the teachers make it perfectly clear that the kids need to study for said tests, and it's going to affect them.
Yeah, they do.
They do that,
I mean,
and it's horrible when you have a 6-year-old.
Yeah, and another thing, and they had this when I was in high school, but the program has since no longer exists at the same high school I went to. So in high school, at least where I went, they did have your basic, science, math, biology, and I was really interested in the sciences. That's where I gravitated. But we also had, and I feel like this should be not only re-implemented at my old high school, but implemented more. We had technical classes, and for people who were not good at they had still to take the basic stuff, but they could also take welding at the school. And and that's something I don't think it's emphasized enough. Not everyone is going to be a chemist or a doctor. There's going to be some welders. There's going to be some people who work construction. Those are just as valid jobs. There
really needs to be a harder push for tech prep.
Yeah. When Marsh High School had tech prep, they had a welding course. I distinctly remember we had a welding course because you had to get permission, and they had to teach it off campus. But
was this a career center?
It was not called the career center. It was basically called the technical building, and it was where all these classes were took.
Was it like right across the street?
We had a really, I don't want to say where I'm from, but we had a really big campus. So it was not technically across the street because my high school was like a mini college is the best way to describe it. So it had inner roads that were only used by teachers. Yeah, it was across the quad.
It was across.
Yeah, the teachers rode on golf carts and shit.
Oh yeah, we had golf carts.
You're so privileged. Oh my god.
I went to an arts and academic.
Well, let me put it this way: the students could not ride the golf carts ever, and I had a medical terminology class that was taught in the technical building, and I had to run my fat ass all across campus because my next class after that was bio, and I swear to God, they were at opposite ends of the campus, and I had 5 minutes.
And they do that on purpose.
In California, those courses were called ropes courses.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they used, and they were taught on campus. Law enforcement, I know, was one of them. Welding, mechanic, and this is back in 2007. So.
In my high school, and actually, Cassie's pretty close, so you can actually confirm this. The high school I went to, in Georgia, actually you could get a pilot training. Courses.
Which high school?
It would be Collins Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm learning this stuff here.
They have
Slowly.
they have an orchestra, and when you can send your kid to learn how to play the violin, that's a pretty awesome high school.
Yeah.
I thought my high school was awesome because it had the technical program, and that's something, because I'm the daughter of somebody who went to technical school. My father went to technical school. He's a drafter. He now does QA for a company that contracts exclusively with NASA.
That's cool. That's how I started out.
Yeah. And my mother, she went to college, but she only got her associates. So I have more education than both of my parents, but I feel that technical stuff is not utilized enough. More kids are encouraged to go to college, and they aren't necessarily a right fit for college, is the best way I can say it.
Yeah.
This
because
is not going to help you.
My dad was not destined to go to college. My father has the best high school stories because they're more about him avoiding work than actual doing work. But he is very skilled with his hands. He's very good at his job. And he would, if he had gone to college, he would have flunked out. And it's not because he's an idiot. It's just because that's not what he's good at.
Yeah. And I think the educational system should steer children towards what they're good at. I'm not really.
I think we should give kids a choice, but I definitely, because I don't like how other countries do it, where they make you take a test, and if you get a certain aptitude on this test, you will end up going to a high school that pertains to that aptitude. I think you should have a choice in what your career should be. But I think we should push technical school as hard as we push college. Because we don't right now.
I agree. Where I get parents. So that's just
Hey, you want to
way in order to make sure.
Hey, placeholder,
you're
roboting pretty bad, man.
His internet's as bad as mine.
No, nobody's internet is as bad as yours. Egglord's internet is so bad that one of the topics for the BrainTrust in the future will be how to get Egglord a better internet.
Well, can we add a placeholder to that list too?
Yeah. We'll throw them on the list. But back to educational reform. Let's go down to the lower levels if we can.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
What does everyone think of implementation of the arts programs?
I think it's very useful. So here's the thing: I was an arts kid.
Yeah, same here. I went to arts.
I was in choir for the longest time. I did band for a year. I was not in theater technically, but I did theater, which is the weirdest thing because I never took the classes, but somehow I ended up on the staff all the time. And they didn't teach me anything that I use in my day-to-day basis, but it really helped as a mental break from the other stuff I was doing, as well as helped me develop social skills. So when people say they're useless, they're not. But they definitely, I don't know. I don't think they should be canceled. I just have no way to really, because I can't say they're necessarily as important as teaching a kid history or science or whatever, but I think they're important, if that makes sense.
I definitely agree with the idea. You have to teach math and science and culture, as Mr. Holland would put it. If you don't have art and literature and language, though, what are we studying what are we caring about? Like, what culture are we building?
That's true. I actually didn't think about the cultural aspect. There's so much of our culture in the arts that
our culture is pretty much defined. Like, arts make up the bone structure of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in language and literature, but I consider literature to be an art. It
is
maybe my perception, but that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as things we don't need to be teaching in school, what are some of the programs we can get rid of? because I'm gonna go ahead and throw out right now, sex and sexuality. I honestly,
I
Sex
think
education needs to be taught.
but and the thing about it is it showed, because I was in a very religious small town. None of the parents talked about sex ed and sexuality to their kids. There were a lot of issues with that. We had a very high STD rate at the school. We also had a very high pregnancy rate, to the point where we had a daycare on campus where kids could keep their kids for free.
That sounds familiar.
you live in Dallas.
No, I did not live in Dallas.
Oh, because I lived in Houston and we had one of those.
I lived near Houston.
Oh.
I didn't live in Houston, but I lived near Houston.
Every high school in California has a daycare on campus.
But they not only teach sex ed in California, they really get into it.
No, it's abstinence only.
Is it really?
Yes.
I disagree with teaching abstinence only. My issue is I don't have a problem with teaching sex education. Explain, like, that's part of biology. It's in my opinion.
I think you need to do
it should be a separate course. It should just be part of biology.
I think well, yes, okay. If you want to do so, we had a half a semester course. It was called health, and it was abstinence based, so it was kind of useless. But it taught you other things that they didn't have time to cover in biology because we were teaching these stupid tests. So in our health classes, we learned things about nutrition, things about taking care of yourself physically. It was actually a good class. The only part that it struggled with was the sex education, and that's because they were limited. So they couldn't teach, things like birth control and condoms. They did not teach any part of that, which basically makes the sex ed stuff useless.
It does.
So I think if they improved that would have been a good course. I think you would have time to teach that stuff in biology if you took out the standardized testing. But we had a half a semester course that was dedicated just to that. And I didn't see a problem with it. Now, I do agree sex ed can be a bit too much. So I think if you're going to do a basic sex ed class, you should teach protection. The acts kind of loosely. So, like, here's here's how you make a baby axe. Let's just go with that.
Yes.
Maybe briefly go over, some other things, but you don't need to do a very thorough class that they do in some countries where they actually teach kids about fisting. Like, that's too much. Like, you don't need to learn about that in sex ed.
That's one of my major issues. Like, don't take sex ed to the point of talking about sex acts and sexuality. That's why I think I specifically said sex and sexuality rather than sex education.
I think all you should touch on in sexuality is that there's straight, and then there's gay, and then there's bi, and here's what they are, and that's it.
And see,
and what
in
type
that
of condoms to use.
and that particular chunk of information about sex should not even be part. I mean, I guess it could be glanced over in sex ed, but in all reality, it belongs in social studies.
Yeah, well, the thing is that I don't mind them doing that. What I don't ever want to see, and I'm sure it's being implemented in some hellscape somewhere, is the Tumblr version of that.
No, God, no, please, no.
Where they're teaching things that are not correct at all. And also the other thing I do not like teaching this to very young children. That bothers me. This should be something middle school, oldest would be middle school, high school, well, not oldest. Youngest would be middle school, oldest would be high school. It should not be taught in kindergarten to 5-year-olds. Like they do in like the Safe Schools program in Australia.
No.
That bugs me. I should not have a kid who's 5 years old know what fisting is. If they know what fisting is, there's a problem. And we're calling the cops.
See, my kids knew, because I have 3. Mommy is going to have surgery to have your brother. That is about the basic information a child needs to know.
I got the sex talk at 10, and there was a reason for that. I was very, I'm not going to say mature because I was 10, but I was asking the questions, and it ended up being very timely because I also got my first period like 3 months later at 10. So it ended up being very timely. But my mom sat me down and she explained things thoroughly. But before that, because I have 2 brothers, so obviously I kind of knew babies do not come from storks. So my parents did sit me down and they told me a few things before that. But we had the thorough stuff at 10. And it was done mostly through my parents.
Well, see, my dad didn't want to teach me anything. And then my mom taught me about 10 when I had my first period about everything.
Oh, my parents grew up in Catholic school, so they were like, yeah, we're going to teach you things because when you're younger, because sisters from both sides of their family had gotten pregnant in high school, and their parents did the whole we're never going to talk about sex thing, and like it backfired. So so they were like, we're going to talk, but we want our kids to come to us with questions first. We're not just going to be like, hey, you've turned 3, let's have this talk. Like, no.
Well, my mom's a hippie, so it was just like, okay, thank you, Mom. And my dad's a strict Catholic.
The thing is both my parents were Catholic, but they were like, we have seen this backfire, so we're going to have the talk with you. So hopefully when you get to that point, you'll be more prepared. So it's just...
With this, we've kind of touched on quality of education. To what extent should we try and vet teachers for quality?
I have a lot of problems with the tenure system. I really do, because it's either good or it's bad. And right now, I'm not going to say anything conclusively in case someone tracks down where I work somehow. We're having a problem with a teacher who has tenure, and it's extremely hard to punish this teacher, even when they're doing stuff that are very inappropriate. The teacher legitimately has to commit a crime. And the thing about it is this teacher's not doing anything that truly is illegal. He's not doing anything. He's not doing sexual harassment. He's not doing anything, but he's doing some things that are very inappropriate, and it's causing a hostile work environment, more or less. And I hate the fact that there's really no way to punish him that matters. There's no consequences because he has tenure. There's just isn't.
Yeah,
that is something I hate.
I've heard stories from my father about a Russian history professor in his college at, I think, the University of Tennessee, who basically would fail all of the female students, and all of the male students would basically get a D in their courses. And that was just what he did, and he fucked off for the rest of the year. And it was because he had tenure. Yeah,
they can get away with murder. Not literally,
they really can.
But they can get away with, this professor, the one I'm talking about, and I've had worse tenure professors that have affected me. Thankfully, I do not work with this teacher exclusively, so it doesn't affect me too much. But people have been turned off from working with him as a PhD student because of how he works with his students, of how he treats them. And the thing is he's not doing anything illegal, but he's definitely not fostering a good teaching environment. And there are no consequences for his actions. And again, that bugs me. I think there should be consequences for a lot of things. It's one thing that bothers me about schools in general is that there's never consequences.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a problem. I think tenure is I'm kind of torn because on one side, I really want teachers to be able to speak out, speak their minds, and as you said, actually do research that the universities might not agree with, and
And that
and
is
not
one of
have.
that
That's
is
the purpose of tenure. That's the
yeah.
protection that you can be a Jordan Peterson and not lose your job.
Yeah. No, and the thing is that I'm torn in the same way, because if tenure is used right, then it's great, and it basically protects that teacher.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also
But
see it getting abused a lot.
There's another problem with that, and I'm gonna invoke my sister because as much as I criticize teachers, I love my sister, and she is such a dedicated teacher. She teaches science for a private school in Alabama, and she's a very, very, very good teacher. But the problem is, schools understand how tenure works. And if my sister did not live in Alabama, she would never have gotten tenure. And the reason is that a lot of schools will hire you on, and let's say your tenure starts at 10 years or 12 or 14, they will watch that. They'll hire you on, you'll work for 9 years, and they'll say, you know what, we'd really like to keep you, but there's a problem, and here it is, and we just gotta let you go. We're gonna give you a severance for the next year and a half, so it's kind of like you're getting paid without having to work. How great is that, right? And what they're not telling you is we don't want to keep you because then we have to keep you. And that's really shitty and that's what happened to my sister. She was out of work for like 2 years. The state of Alabama has a law that if a teacher works at a school and leaves in good standing with that school or whatever, that whatever years she's worked, as long as there's no objection, will count towards her tenure at any job she gets in the future. So in other words, all my sister had to do was go and get a job as a teacher for a year, and she had tenure. The problem is, at that point, you've got 9 years under your belt. Whatever school hires you has to be willing to keep you. And it's really hard to get a job. And that's why she was out of work for so long. And it's really unfair when, it's just another government regulation. Like, I can't argue with my boss for more hours without overtime.
I think there needs to be, especially with, I think a good compromise is if you are doing something legitimately abusive to students but is not illegal, you need to have your tenure revoked, because the things this professor has done, and I'm not like, he's not being abusive as in he's not using people's pronouns abusive, like he is actually abusing his power with his students. That should make him lose tenure, and it won't. And that's a problem.
Yeah, like the example of the Russian history professor that my father knew of, who failed all the women and barely passed all the men. That needs to be stopped.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a compromise in actually how they can lose their tenure. And the problem is that I also see that getting abused too, because they can be like, well, this person, like I just brought up, this teacher's not using this person's pronouns, or this teacher's talking about something not PC. They're abusing their students. It's like, no, they're not.
No,
or
that's
false
not
accusations. Yeah.
And that goes back to the hand holding. Look, here's my problem, and once again, my sister's a teacher. Some of the most influential people in my life have been teachers, and some of the best people in the world are teachers. But I'm gonna be straightforward with you. About 98% of them are worth shit, and the reason they're teachers is because they could not succeed in the real world. And that's the damn truth of it. And most of them deal with children all day long and don't know how to deal with adults on an adult level. That's why you see so many women molesting children in classrooms, and so many teachers that are men getting arrested. Like,
you want to know where that is the most
issue.
You want to know where that is the most apparent in teaching, and it's really upsetting. And this is something I kind of wanted to talk about too. Oh my God. So my brother has a gift with special ed children. That's what he's going to be. He's very good with them. He's very patient. He is able to connect to these kids. I have another teacher friend who got no special ed training, but thankfully she's very good at what she does. And she got put into special ed because she works in a very poor school district and they couldn't hire a teacher. So she got put in it because she was new and no one else wanted to deal with these kids. but thankfully she's actually very good with them. You want to talk about where teachers are put in a place where they're not trained or they are not vetted correctly? It's going to be special ed. Because
I've been through special education programs, personally, largely due to a misdiagnosis of autism that they kept diminishing over time. Oh, you have Asperger's, you're on the spectrum. But
I did not have autism, but I had social problems, and I had a stutter. So I have also been, I have also been in a speech program.
Yeah, I had that problem.
I'm sure you can hear the stammer in my voice, which I think probably contributed. But
I got over mine by touching my nose. I'm not kidding. That's how I did it. Like every time I said it, I just
what I saw was I saw teachers systematically abusing the students emotionally in those programs, and they just they were not qualified to be able to handle special needs people.
It takes a specific type of person to be able to deal with
really
like that.
They did not have the patience for it.
You have to be extremely patient. You have to be understanding of what's going to happen, and you have to be able to change your plans at a moment's notice, because you can be teaching something, and if, let's just say, a kid who's severe spectrum autism has a freak out, you have to deal with that child and get them to calm down. Meanwhile, making sure your students are safe, other students are safe, that student is safe, and you have to try to keep the other students from reacting, because some of them have other issues that they're not going to understand what's going on. Lesson be damned, that's the priority.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who cannot do that.
And there's almost in those programs a need to know the student in a more personal manner.
Mm-hmm.
Because that aids in the patience of it.
This is why I think the Spartan culture died out, is because they were never going to make it in today's society.
When you're literally stoning your children.
Stoning your children because
look, we've got another retard. Oh, well, the rates have gone up so high. At this point, we're throwing all the kids off the cliff.
Oh my God! This
one's got a funny leg.
this kid can't walks pigeon-toed. Throw him off the cliff.
Yeah.
It's just
see, the bone legs I see.
The problem is today every kid is on the spectrum. If I had been,
it is.
I'm in the third standard deviation, and I'd be on the spectrum.
It's the same. So I had, like I mentioned, I had social issues. So my parents were very good to me. They never abused me, but they had twins, and they were very sick. My brothers were very sick when they were born, because they were born 2 months early, and this was in the 90s.
Okay.
So
born in the 90s?
They were born in the 90s. It was early 90s. I make a point to that because there are kids who are born 2 months early now, and medical technology has advanced so much that it's not necessarily a big deal as it was back then. They almost died like 3 times.
I'm a product of 81, so I remember that era.
So they almost died 3 times. So my parents, not intentionally, were neglecting me to take care of them because they had some severe issues. They eventually figured out, because I started acting out, and they figured it out. But because of that, I had some lingering issues with I had some social problems. I was not autistic. I want to underline that. There was a very clear issue. I did have a speech disorder, and I had a stutter. Those were just unrelated things. They were not related to the neglect. They just were things that I'd always had.
In my instance, it was.
And also, I legitimately, sorry, I wasn't done.
Sorry, I should.
I also had.
Didn't you hear the comma egg?
I also had. I legitimately had ADD. I actually went through a full diagnosis procedure with a therapist and a doctor. So it was not, I just went to a doctor and they're like, oh, you've got ADD. Like, I went through an entire procedure and it was like months before I got a diagnosis.
Quick
so
question.
I had some problems.
Do you have an older sibling?
No, I'm the oldest.
Oh, okay. Do you have a younger sibling that's not a twin?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm trying to clarify where you were, in the situation.
Yeah.
Going Freudian here.
So I had some issues, but I was never autistic. But what I did see, and I think it is basically the new ADD, ADHD, all these kids that were just a little awkward were getting labeled as ADD or ADHD without going through the same procedures I did. They just literally went to the doctor. And I see the same exact thing happening with kids who are a little bit weird. They're now autistic.
Yeah.
And it's
that's why I say I say I would be judged autistic today because I was really, really weird.
Yeah,
I wasn't a little bit weird. I was really, really weird.
My son, according to Georgia, they're saying my son is autistic, and I'm like, no, you're not going to convince me.
That's what happened to me. I basically was a sheltered 4-year-old that just started elementary when they diagnosed me.
Of course, so you had parental detachment problems.
Yes.
Okay. And they basically diagnosed you autistic.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's the same thing that happened with me. I was being neglected. Now there was I was being taken care of physically. It was just emotional neglect. I don't want to frame my parents as abusers because they weren't. There was a legitimate reason.
Look, they were focused on your brothers.
Yeah, exactly. And I was having social problems stemming from that. I feel like if it was 2000 and whatever, because this is in the 90s, they would have labeled me as autistic because I wasn't making friends. And it's like, well, I wasn't making friends because I was having emotional problems.
You were having emotional problems because you didn't feel like your parents paid enough attention to you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That being the oldest child, you probably felt like you had your parents all to yourself for all this time, and then these two little sick boys came along and stole them from you.
Oh, it was like
there's some element of that to it.
Okay, so you have to understand I was also 5. So and they were born, I am not going to lie, this was like the worst timing for this to occur. They were born on December 23rd. So Santa Claus was late that year, as was told to me by my parents.
He ruined your Christmas. These two little sick little boys ruined your Christmas and took your parents away from you. You didn't get a present. You got your parents stolen.
So of course I had emotional problems stemming from that because things were happening.
I love watching my boys grow up. I have an older stepson and a middle, my firstborn, and they're literally a year apart. 15 days separates them. They're literally a year apart, and it's just adorable watching them thinking about all the little damages they're doing to each other. Does this sound wrong? But no, I'm thinking like I watch birth order effects all day long when I'm at home, and it's just I love listening to your story. It's wonderful. But
but the thing about that is
what can we use this to look at educational reform for?
It's just so I think that I've always thought that special ed for kids who are legitimately special ed, and we're not talking about weird kids, we're talking about kids who legitimately have something physically wrong with them. They are nonverbal for whatever reason. We're talking about those kids. That needs to be reformed, and those teachers definitely need to be vetted. We do need to vet teachers better, but especially we need to start with special ed first because there's a lot of abuse going on with those kids because a lot of them can't vocalize, and the teachers know they can get away with it.
Yeah,
it's why every once in a while.
I said that's. I didn't realize that was a problem, and this is news to me. And like, I don't know. I get really upset about the children being abused or hurt or in any way. So
that's because you're normal. Normal people get upset by this. But it is a problem. It's a major problem with special ed, and it's not necessarily that the teacher's being a mean person. It's just that they're not made for that job. They get put in that job and they reach their breaking point and they'll do something that is abusive. There are some people who continue to do it because they are terrible people. But
you know what we could do for
at least once a week you'll see like nanny cam videos from parents who are seeing bruises on their kids, and you see them handling these kids very roughly.
So I've got a solution for this. Well, not a solution. This is the BrainTrust, and we're all about ideas. So I've got an idea for this. What if we gave a 100% no questions asked option for special ed teachers to and I know this is, I'm going to hear a lot of slippery slope, dangerous area, but it's just brainstorming. But what if we gave them no questions asked, I can't handle my job anymore, can I transfer out for a bit kind of options? I would rather them not be there and getting paid to do something else.
Any job that has an emotional aspect to it, it's not just special ed. I think it should be extended. I think it should be extended to people like social workers. I think it should be expanded to even cops, where they can do a no questions asked and be like I can't do this anymore.
I need to take some time and do some other, I'll still work. I don't have a problem with still working. I just don't want to do this particular aspect of the job anymore. Because I got to walk away from it. I have to walk away.
These are jobs that require you to be in a certain mindset. And if you can't do it anymore, you shouldn't do it anymore. Because you're going to get someone hurt.
Here's my problem, though. The person working they have obligations. They have their financial obligations. They have their family to take care of. They have a rent to pay. They have bills to pay. They have people that depend on them. If you can't do the job anymore, but you won't be able to pay your bills if you can't do the job anymore, that shouldn't stop you. That shouldn't be a barrier. There should be some aspect. Look, let's transfer you out of this position into another position where you won't have this level of emotional stress.
That's fair. I mean,
let you calm down, and then maybe in a few years, put you back in it when you're a little bit settled out.
That's totally fair.
I'm talking about positional breaks, basically long-term positional breaks.
Yeah, I don't see an issue, and it could be. So, like in my job, there's some aspects of forensics that can be very stressful. If a person is having a hard time dealing with the emotional aspects of their work, you can switch them to do something else like QA. Which is just paperwork.
Yeah.
Quality You'll never assurance. Have to testify. You're never going to have to look at pictures of victims. You're never going to have to testify with the victims' families, etc.
Yeah, working records for 2 months.
Yeah.
I'm
we do that. We do that now. I've never seen in my field someone do it for emotional reasons.
Have the police take out their uniform and be the guard at the courthouse.
Yeah. I've seen people, if, for example, they are distracted with something in their personal life, like cancer or something, I've seen them be switched to a non-lab work field, so that way they don't accidentally fuck something up because they're distracted. And it's temporary. It's not permanent.
And this all comes back to special education students keeping them safe. That's the whole point of all this.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, yes, it's going to be abused, but it's kind of one of those things where I'd rather we have someone who was abusing it so they can get, just take a break from the stressful job than a kid getting hurt. That's something that's not even a question.
Yeah, even if it's a publicly funded school, as a taxpayer and a libertarian, I'm more comfortable paying them to take time off. Mm-hmm. It's a valuable investment for me, in my opinion.
I mean, it's like kids getting hurt or someone, it's kids getting hurt or someone, abusing it to get time off. Like, I'm like, no, I'd rather have the people abusing it to get time off.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah, honestly, and it comes down to like if you look at the founding of our nation, it's based under the same concept. Would you rather somebody get away with a crime uh, or to have everybody's rights be abused?
Oh yeah, that's
The
an aspect of
the potential of somebody getting away with a crime versus everyone's rights being abused.
the
And
idea
people,
that you would rather have
Yeah.
10 guilty men go free than an innocent man being
Than one
imprisoned is
innocent man.
literally
That-
the aspect of why I do my job.
that's
So-
why I was going for that. Yeah. Rather
Yeah,
have
so that's a principle I personally stand for. But there are people, I know this is kind of a tangent, but there are people in forensics who literally just care about not having a backlog. They want to get convictions because they think it makes the DA work with them better. And it does. But I'd rather be the person who stands there and be like, I'm sorry, this guy you think is guilty, the evidence is not there. Because I'm
Yeah.
not going to convict someone who's innocent.
Well, and for
Mhm.
anybody that questions what Tina is saying right now or even challenges it a little, I would suggest that you go and look up Trey Gowdy Liberty College speech. Go listen to that and ask yourself, do you prefer truth or do you prefer vengeance? Anyway. So
But, sorry, that's a tangent, but it
If
kind
I
of
get
comes into play
vengeance,
here.
But if I choose vengeance, do I get to to lynch my lynch?
no, vengeance doesn't solve anything. The answer is truth. You should want truth. Do you want to be? No, the question is, do you want truth or do you want to be right?
It wasn't a multiple choice.
No, and we were talking about testing earlier too, man. So anyway, the BrainTrust is a weekly brainstorming session where we pick a subject and we just think about it and we talk about it and we come up with ideas for how to make it great again. Oh wait, shit. How to make it better. And got to be PC here. Anyway, we welcome you all to join us every Wednesday night, and there's always a slot open. We'll always have a one or two open for the people in the chat, for people who want to come on, guests, and we thank you all. Let's go ahead and do individual shilling. Tina, where can they find you?
Right now, mostly on Twitter. I do have a YouTube channel. It's not dead. It's just on a really long hiatus because I'm trying to finish this PhD and I literally can't do anything else. That
Once
is
she gets back to her cello playing, we're gonna do some awesome duets with the vocal cello. Mix. It's gonna be amazing.
But yeah, so I'm at Twitter. The Twitter account is actually Tina with a little space in between. And that's mostly what I mostly just shitpost. Sometimes I talk politics. I talk a lot about video games and comics because that is just they brought politics into those first. I just want to clear that up.
Yep, they did.
That's what I'm talking about.
I don't want to talk about Infinity War.
I'm not going to talk about it. No, actually, I have no problems with that.
I'm still really upset about it.
No, that's fine.
It's
That's
just
fine.
It's just one little teenager in particular that really.
It's okay. That hurt me too.
I know.
No, sometimes I talk about that, but what I mostly talk about is just people trying to put their politics into stuff that doesn't need to be super duper political. And it's terrible. It is the worst writing. I hate it so much.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Cassie, tell us where we can find you. Cassie.
Just on
Ragdoll.
Twitter, I guess. Ragdoll Cassie. I'm just around.
We're pushing her really hard to make a YouTube channel. We really want Cassie to do a YouTube channel. And by the way, brainstorming session next week. Well, no, I'm just kidding. But at some point, we're gonna have what kind of channel should Cassie do? As soon as we can convince her to do it, so jump on Twitter, follow Cassie, tell her to make a YouTube channel. As soon as she does it, we'll hold the BrainTrust and we'll have a BrainTrust on what kind of channel should Cassie build. Anyway, follow her on Cassie the Ragdoll. Or what is it? Was it Ragdoll Cassie?
Yeah, Ragdoll Cassie.
Ragdoll Cassie. Okay, and follow the Academy. I'm your host, Dolphin Radio. You can follow me. I have a YouTube channel. It's just full of a bunch of bullshit. And follow the Academy. We have the debate show Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. I'm sorry, is it 10 p.m.?
No, the Academy is at, I think, at 8 p.m.
8 p.m. and then 9 p.m. Eastern, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I got that one. And the Brain Trust is every Wednesday night at 11 p.m., 10 p.m. Central, because I'm not a heathen. I speak in New York time. Good night and good luck. Anyway, yeah, sorry, guys.